very much for the introduction. It's so great to be here. Good morning, everyone here and the online audience as well. We had an excellent day yesterday. So many insightful presentations from colleagues from around the world. I would like to thank Professor Salam and his team for an excellent event so far. My name is Manuel Frutos-Perez. I am Chief Academic Officer at Cambridge Education Group in the UK. I'm also a visiting professor in online education at the University of Hull, also in the UK. And my presentation today is about how I see that universities need to evolve and adapt in order to meet the challenges that the world faces, and how these will help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So let me first introduce a bit of the work we do at Cambridge Education Group. Is a group of companies, all of them working in international education in different ways, bringing international students to different campuses in the UK and Ireland. But we also do a lot of digital online education. In terms of the digital part of our work, so far we have got 9 university partners in the UK. We have developed together with those universities over 50 programs of study. All of those programs of study are fully online for students to study, and most of those programs are postgraduate courses, so full master's programs that students can study. We now recruit students from 143 different countries, and what is really important about what we do is that we always say to our university partners, if you are going to launch a program of study online, it has to be just as good as what you would do on campus. We cannot compromise on quality. And our retention and satisfaction figures are a testament to that. 90% retention across our programs, and student satisfaction in the 84% across all of those programs. And the satisfaction of our students gets surveyed exactly the same way as campus-based students. So this just gives you, hopefully, an idea that it can be done. Online education can be just as good. So let's look first at the global growth in student numbers in higher education. Now, all the data I've used for this presentation is either coming from the UNESCO Institute for Statistics or UN or other reputable sources. They're very big data sets, so the figures are statistically significant. Now, in 1970, there were 32.6 million university students in the world. And the prediction is that by 2040, there should be something like 595 million students. This is a phenomenal amount of growth in the sector. And let's look at that picture of 1970. You can see here, this is the global enrollment ratio in higher education in 1970, and you can see there that all of that was pretty much concentrated in the United States and Russia. Move forward to 2022, and that figure has changed. So there was a dramatic growth in higher education across the world, but that growth was concentrated in the American continent, in Europe, and in Australia. And what you can see there is that the areas that are next to come in terms of that growth that is expected to continue are Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. So this is a very, very useful picture for us as educators to see, because between now and 2040, we are going to see a lot of growth in higher education, but we need to understand that that growth is, and that demand is mainly going to come from Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. And this is a detail about where that growth is happening in different countries. You'll see some countries in Africa are grayed out. This is simply because there's not enough data for this prediction to be accurate. But generally speaking, the data back this trend. Now, this growth, this expansion that we have seen in higher education, and that based on we have seen, and the data from UNESCO, we can see where this growth is going, presents with some challenges. The first one is what I describe as being impossible. If we are to meet this demand in the growth of student numbers, we would need to build between now and 2040, something like 7,000 to 12,000 universities, new universities that don't exist today. That's clearly impossible in the time frame. The opportunity, so as a result of online adoption, by 2030, 90% of growth in online higher education enrollments could come from emerging economies. That's where the opportunity is. If universities want to expand and they want to spread their reach and really make a difference, that's where the growth in the higher education online is going to be. And the goal, there is a global need to find talents and skills. This is fueling a race to expand access to education. We know there is a clear link between education and development, between education and stability. So this is really driving this demand for talent and skills across the world. So expanding access to education is not whether we should do it. We absolutely need to do it. So we need to find ways in which we can cater for that demand and that growth. SDG 4, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. We all understand the importance of that. So what is the university role in this? I would like to use one of my favorite quotes. We need to be the change that we want to see in the world. We universities, we professors, educators, we are the ones who need to make a difference. It's not good enough just to sit back and say, well, we just can't cope with this number of students. We need to find ways to do it. And my view is that what that means is that universities, all universities, they're going to have to shift their leadership focus, shifting from local, serving the local communities, to a global population. They need to expand the way they do things. They need to carry on doing the really good work that they have been doing so far, but they need to expand their reach. They need to be able to cater for a much larger number of students. And if you do that as a university, if you address SDG 4, then there are other sustainable development goals that come with that. Number 8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth. We all understand the clear link between education and sustainable economic growth. No sustainable development can happen without educating our populations. SDG number 10, reduce inequality within and among countries. Now, education is the great leveler. When you educate a population, you reduce inequality automatically. You give them access to a better future. You give them access to better jobs. You give them access to sustainable economic growth. Therefore, you reduce inequality. And also, very importantly, if you agree with my view that we need to expand online and digital education, is that we will be addressing also SDG 13, take urgent action to combat climate change, because online education is actually the greenest form of education. Instead of building 10,000 new universities, we can expand access by giving access online and digitally. Then we are reducing the impact on the environment. People don't need to travel either. It is the greenest form of education. You can imagine a higher education. Now, when I talk about these things, a lot of people always ask me, yes, okay, but is online education the second best? Are we saying we're going to create some sort of second-class education for those students who cannot attend or cannot fit in our current universities? My contention is no, we shouldn't compromise on quality. I go back to best practice principles. So this is a quote from one of my favorite books in teacher education, written by Professor Diana Laurillard from the Institute of Education in the UK. She said, learning in higher education is much about acquiring ways of seeing the world. Now, this is a picture from a lecture hall, from a typical university in the UK. I would contend that that is not the right context to teach people and giving them the skills they need to see different ways of seeing the world, being stuck in a room in rows just listening to someone. I would contend that the way to do that, the way to develop critical thinking and ensuring that students have really good different ways of seeing the world is actually the digital world, because that's the world we live in, that's the world they live in, that's the world in which they are going to operate once they access their professions. So if we are to really teach the students, get them ready for their next stage in their careers, actually digital education can play a very important role in that. Now, at Cambridge Education Group, we have developed our own pedagogic framework for online education in order to make sure that we're doing just that we are delivering education that is of the highest quality possible. It's a very structured approach to delivering online education to make sure that the quality is there. And I can show you some examples of what that looks like. So students do guided practice. This would be typically lecture content, but in here they access texts and data and different kind of sources of information, such as videos and sounds and so on, and things that they have to kind of acquire that knowledge from. But then we do lots of challenge activities with them. This one you can see is a group diagram creation. So students here will work in a group. They're given a challenge and they collaboratively, they need to work out how they produce that challenge. Another example, a simulation example. So that's something that online education is really great at. You can really design very effective simulations that students need to go through, and they learn a lot from that. This example is from a master's course in logistics and supply chain management that we have at the University of Hull. And students here, they have to go through a simulation of a blood supply for the National Health Service. And they need to figure out how they need to move the goods around so that all the right amounts of blood and different types are in the right places at the right time. And that's something that students are not going to learn just sitting in a lecture hall listening to someone. This is a very effective way of learning how they need to do that as a logistics professional. Another type of challenge activity, ideas wall example. There you have got an interactive group activity that prompts students to consider their current skill set and share their thoughts on an ideas wall. This is a kind of a sophisticated discussion forum type of activity. And we do lots of reflection activities with the students. We also run live sessions with the students, live webinars where they interact with the other cohort of students and the online tutors. And this is incredibly valuable for the students because they get to hear from all those different perspectives from students around the world, and they get to discuss things. And we touched on the issue yesterday on whether we are going to promote, a Western view of education to all students around the world. And this counters that very effectively because you have in a classroom students who are based around the world. They haven't left their original countries. They're still there, and they're debating with each other, bringing their context to life in the context of education. It's a really powerful way in which people from different parts of the world, they learn from the way in which things are done in other parts of the world. And so I go back to my initial contention about learning in higher education is much about acquiring ways of seeing the world. And what I would say is that in terms of the future prospects of our students, digital education actually can be much more effective than sticking them inside a lecture hall where they're passive recipients of some sort of stale content, whereas digitally, online, they can be very active learners. And I would like to end my presentation with a quote from a student, which we received recently. This is a student who's studying a master's course in dementia at the University of Hull, fully online program. And she sent us that quote, and to me what stood out is what she's saying there. She's saying this course, the learning activities she's doing online, is really making her question what she reads and see. This is exactly what we want our students at that level to be doing. We want them to be critical thinkers. We want them to be the experts of the future, where they're going to create a better place for all of us. So with that quote, I hope that you have enjoyed my presentation, and I'm very happy to take any questions or discuss with you things later. Thank you.